Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to this special Saturday edition of our webinar series created by Reputation Today and powered by SCORE. My name is Hemant Gole, and I'm a part of School of Communications and Reputation. We are collectively battling adversities, and while we do that, some really incredible stories emerge out of these adversities from a communications perspective. And that's why we are very excited to be able to host senior journalist Saikat Datta today to talk about his crucial work amidst this outbreak. And I'm also thankful to Amrit and Vineet for guiding this conversation. So Amrit and Vineet, over to both of you.
Thank you, Hemant. Thank you, Saikat, for taking out time. I know this is very, very busy time for you. For those of you who've not read about Saikat, quick introduction. He has been a senior journalist, editor across print media, online media, digital media. He's been an award-winning journalist. He's been a public policy analyst with a special focus on tech and security. He's been a policy director at the Center for Internet and Society. And a very interesting role that he has done, which he talked to us about, was as the vice president and head of de-risking strategies at the Reliance Global Group. And I've had a chance to listen to him, and that really prompted me that he should talk to communication specialists, because the model that he's created currently to work around the Gurugram COVID19 Integrated Command Centre, he as a citizen approached the police and put this up, and there are layers of communication that he's created. And lastly, Saikat has also been an author of a book called The India Special Forces, talking about the history and future of special forces. So he has a knack for working across complex things. And today we are going to hear about the positive things that are being done in Gurgaon to work around COVID. So with that, over to you, Saikat.
Thank you, Amrit, and thank you, Vineet, for having me here. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, very well.
Okay. So I'll share my screen and take you through some of the things that we have done. Basically, the idea was that I've done a few different kinds of jobs, journalism being almost hardwired into my brain, so that comes very easily. But that was one aspect of my life that I had to hold back very strongly to ensure that I don't become a journalist while doing this part of the thing. Because as a journalist, you're almost programmed to start looking for faults. But this time my approach was that I've had some experience covering natural disasters, and specifically three ones which had left a big impression on me. One was the tsunami of 2004, then there was the Kosi floods in Bihar, and there was the earthquake in J&K. And in all three, I was deeply embedded with the military. In fact, I was in the first IL-76, which landed at Car Nicobar. And there was a group captain, Bhattacharya, who was the base commander. The poor man came to us with just a towel and a shirt around him. And everything was completely flattened. And then when we moved to Port Blair 2-3 days later, the brigade had also suffered some casualties. They also had some problems. And the first thing that hits you is that when a natural disaster occurs, the state's capacity, the government's capacity to react is also hit in a significant manner. So I was always thinking that, one, how do we have an integration where citizens can work with the government for a number of reasons, primarily being that we can start plugging gaps very quickly. So that was one thing in my mind. Second is, when citizens become involved with the government, they are also aware of what is happening in the ground. While the government has a certain structure which, for the want of a better word, which is very good for peacetime, for a crisis situation or for a wartime experience, that model may not necessarily work. So therefore, can we bring in the sum total of our networks, our capacities, our capabilities into the government and create an integrated model? So that was my first idea. There were certain key things about communication that also came to my head. For example, how does the government communicate at a time when natural normal channels of communication are broken? For example, your newspapers are not coming out. So how do you communicate? So RWS said no newspapers. Television, the less said, the better, because how much can you really focus on television? Plus the fact that, television will try and tell you the bigger stories or some strange version of a story that they see, but will they be able to tell you the local story? So how do you manage local issues where the government and the people are able to talk to each other. So those were some of my initial thoughts. I called up a very dear friend who's a very senior police officer in Haryana, and he immediately said that I'm going to put you in touch with the right person who can help you do some of this. So that person happened to be the Deputy Commissioner of Police in Gurgaon. He's in charge of two things. One is the east zone of Gurgaon, as well as the traffic zone. So as a result, what happens is that because he's east, that's a large area that he's already in command of. Because of traffic, he has city-wide or district-wide jurisdiction. And three, he's also an IPS officer and therefore the senior most DCP among all the other DCPs in the area. So that also gives him a lot of clout. He's actually a very young guy. He was there at the ILSS webinar. Unfortunately, he could not join us today because he's in a VC with the rest of the government today. But his name is Chandar Mohan. He's a 2015 IPS officer. He's from Sirsa, Haryana. So he's a local. He knows the language. He knows the people. But he's also from IIT Delhi. He's an electrical engineer from IIT Delhi. So he's got somebody who's got the right ideas and the right spirit, and probably one of the finest IPS officers I've ever met. So he immediately put me in touch with the district administration, and there were two key people in that district administration. One was Mr. Manish Kumar Yadav, who is the Tehsildar of one of the zones in Gurgaon, but more importantly, he's also the deputy controller of the civil defense team in the district. And for the last 2 months, he had, for some reason, activated and energized the civil defense team, which is basically a World War II concept, where that during wartime or during crisis, you have citizen volunteers who wear what you see me wearing, this kind of an uniform, and they go out and help the district administration to take care of any kind of risk mitigation or disaster mitigation. So this team was almost in place, and it was just fortuitous that he had prepared everybody and they could immediately roll out. So Chandar Mohan, me, Manish Yadav, and they also introduced us to another civilian.
Saikat, I think we lost your audio.
Okay, so yes, the four of us, the DCP, Chandar Mohan, and Mohit Sharma, and me, the four of us sat and we quickly made a plan. And we also figured out what kind of capabilities we had, what we needed to do. A certain basic structure started falling into place by the 24th, when the lockdown was announced. And then we started looking at, we needed to set up what we call an op headquarters. And that's when I explained to them that we need a integrated ops room kind of concept. Now, where this integrated ops room concept comes from is basically from the military. And I've spent most of my life with the military, going out on operations in different formations, etc., and mostly in Kashmir. So in the military, at the apex level, which is the army headquarters, which is in Delhi, you have the Director General of Military Operations. So he has an ops room. Now, when the army goes out for a war or a fight, it has armies, which is you have the Northern Army, Western Army, Southern Army, Southwestern Army. Each army commander has his own ops room, and under them you have their corps, under that divisions, brigades. So every formation has their own ops room. The ops room basically is that if you can integrate different kind of stakeholders, like when an army goes out to fight, it will have the infantry, it will have the armored corps, it will have the artillery, it will have all your logistics, which is ordnance corps, your EME chaps, etc. Everybody sits together so that decision making becomes very fast. The commander has full visibility of what is going on, and then you can channel a lot of your energies in the right direction instead of having to look around who's where, what, etc. So that was one concept. The second was, how do we get normal citizens to also start communicating with the government? Because right now fake news, rumors, etc. were beginning to start flying high, and all sorts of things were coming. Somebody said, bats have been specially created in a virus lab in China to go out and spread this across the world, and all sorts of things, both at the international level, at the national level, and also at the local level. So we started building a backend data team, which I'll call Data Team 2, whose job was to start connecting with all the RWAs in the city and get one member from that to be part of a WhatsApp group. And then the DCP and both his ACPs became part of that group. They sent out some initial messages so that people knew that this is official. And this was being done on the fly because we were also moving and trying to do a lot of other things. So that was one of the first things we did, was create a common platform so that people can speak to each other and treat it as an emergency channel where if citizens are getting very hassled or they are worried about something, they can communicate, and I will ensure that the authorities can pay some attention to it. Two, how if the authorities need to quickly put out something that is focused, very important, and they need to communicate, this channel now becomes an authentic channel where they can say, look, this is a decision that has been taken, please transfer this information to the rest of your RWAs as well as the rest of your residents, so that more and more people are aware of what needs to be done at that particular point in an emergency. We were also aware of the fact that this is a situation like no other, because let's say during the Kosi floods, NGOs immediately start rolling out, government rolls out. I was with an army engineering column and we were doing a lot of rescue ops. Same thing in J&K, where in the high mountains, I was in Tangdahar where we have a brigade there, and across there is a river which we call the Kishan Ganga. The Pakistan occupied Kashmir is just across the river. We could see their army rolling out while our troops were also going out in relief operations. But you had a lot of people who could step out and do stuff. In this case, we didn't want too many people to come out. So we actually need volunteers, but can't have too many. Movement became a problem. Getting passes became a problem. How do you then start looking at? So in fact, on the first day, and I want to show this. So I have, being a journalist, I'm part of essential services. But Chandar, he wrote a letter sitting there, signed it, stamped it, and this became my pass. This is how we were rolling, because even before the government had come up with a plan, we knew we had to move. So we all took a pass like this and we started rolling out. And because most of the manning of the barricades would be done by the traffic police, this really came in hand. And that's how. And then we stuck some stickers which had been signed by him and the Tehsildar. We put it up on our cars and we started rolling. Here I will try and share my screen with you and show you what exactly we built, so that you have an idea of what we were trying to do. Now, if you can see, we call this the Gurugram COVID19 Integrated Command Centre. Why we called it the Integrated Command Centre was because it was an integration between citizens and the administration. That was the first important thing that we had to do. But we also wanted to integrate the different kinds of government officials who could come together. For example, you had the MCG, you had the district administration, the civil defense, the police, etc. So we decided that if this has to happen in a methodical manner, then we need to start integrating and cooperating with each other, because sometimes what happens is if the areas are not well defined, then 2 or 3 agencies end up duplicating or triplicating the same thing together. So as a result, we had to ensure that everybody's on the same page and we can do things together and ensure that there is no wastage of precious resources. Also, you see, one thing that I've learned from my experience is that branding and exercise becomes very, very critical. So if you brand it right, then people, it starts getting into the normal lexicon of people. They start talking about it. They start understanding and identifying the concept as a particular message that has to go out. So integrated, command, etc., all became very critical names. And therefore, we could say that moment we put out COVID, the fact that it is related to COVID-19, that became clear. The fact that we were integrating people and different stakeholders and citizens, that became very clear. And when you say it's command center, that means that this is somebody with authority. So all those facts also came into place. So these are the people who basically we wrote this, and this was released on the 6th of April, because we started actively around the 25th or the 26th of March. But we wanted to see that there is some kind of validation of what we are doing before we wanted to put it on paper. And the senior police official I had spoken to earlier, who helped me start all this, he had also said, start recording and documenting everything, so that later on we can work this into a proper model and think through all our learnings and create a proper paper which we can share with the rest of the country. So basically, as I said, some of this is written that Chandar Mohan IPS, he was there, Manish Yadav was there, we all started putting together. This, as on the 5th of April, we had already distributed dry ration packets, which is about 10,000 in manner. So these are like for 10,000 families had been covered by the 5th. This figure today stands somewhere above 30,000 families. So how we calculate a family, which is a standard rule in India for disaster management, is that 5 people per family. So whatever rations that we put together is for those 5 people, and it can sustain them anything between 7 to 10 days depending on the size of the family, but that's the rough calculation. And the cooked meals, people were also offering to make cooked meals. So we created a map, and on that grid, we started finding out which community is nearest to whichever kitchen. A fleet of cars were put together. A friend of mine, he's a well-known photographer called Mustafa Qureshi. He also happens to be the son of the former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi, who's also from Haryana cadre. So that also really helped us. Mustafa is an off-roader. He has a Isuzu truck. So he got a series of Isuzu trucks to come together. And these guys became the first vehicles that we had in our transport fleet to roll out whatever relief operations we had to do. And these guys still today, they drive 12 to 13 hours a day carrying rations across the city, spending money from their pockets for the fuel and the diesel, and have got nothing from the government. They do everything on their own. So these people then started picking up cooked food and started taking it to whichever communities needed, and we started mapping it. Later on, as things increased, we had a little more order. We had a dedicated cooked food coordinator who now maps everything and starts directing from kitchen to the community. So this was one of the first things we did. We started also making these kits. So food started coming in, and we started making these kits: 5 kilos of wheat, 5 kilos of rice, 1 kilo of dal, half a liter of cooking oil, 1 packet of salt, 1 kilo of sugar, and some tea, 1 soap, and in some cases sanitary napkins. So this became the proper kit that could go, and it would keep a family of 5 okay for 10 to 12 days. Now, this is the zone. This is how the zoning was done. Now, this is also getting refined. So if you see, we divided the whole district of Gurgaon into 4 zones. And then we said we appointed a zone head to each one of those areas, who would then take care of it. So initially they had to do their mapping on their own, and also ensure that communities which have been identified are supplied with cooked food or dry rations. This has of course become much better, and now we have further divided the zones into sub zones, and we have started mapping them to each police station, because the police station jurisdiction is very well mapped. So the SHOs have also become a major backbone of this relief operations as well as for verification. The other thing that has happened is I've got a promotion. As I was saying, initially Chandar gave me 20 constables, and suddenly I had to brief them. So my experience comes from the army, so I briefed them into a team, told them that we won't do Jai Shri Ram or Ram Ram or anything. Everybody says Jai Hind from today till the end of this operation. Then we said, I got one head constable who's very good at what we call an empty pool operation, which is motor transport pool operation. So he had experience of running transport of the police, etc. So he was also aligned to me. And our job was that, first of all, we have to have a feasible running fleet which can carry the relief operations. So in that, Chandar again came very helpful. As DCP traffic, he knew a whole lot of transporters. He put out an appeal to them, and a whole lot of transporters immediately dedicated one vehicle to us. We also started getting a little bit of donations, and that money came in handy to keep adding fuel to our vehicles which could go out. So different things were happening. And we also now, first I started with 20 constables, then he gave me 70 other constables. Their job was to map all the city, every cluster, right down to every house possible where relief is required. So what we did is, so this I call my intelligence team. Now this team of 70 constables, one from the police station and one from the traffic department. Both these boys become a buddy pair. In that well-defined police jurisdiction, they go out, look for these clusters, find how many people are there, and we start mapping families, basically identify one person per family. This is also to ensure that in some houses where the men have got trapped in whatever villages they come from, the women or their children don't get lost out, because many of the families got trapped in that sense. Husbands had gone to their village and suddenly they got trapped in the lockdown and the women were left alone. We also found a lot of pregnant women. So the mapping became very important. So also to ensure that there is no duplication and nobody is hoarding any of this material, because resources are very, very precious at this time. We started taking one name per house with their mobile and their Aadhaar number, to ensure that there is no duplication and there is some sort of check and balance. If any other agency wants to come and audit this, they can very easily audit this. We also, while we were doing this, somebody said, why don't we use some technology? So we also created an app, which is a very simple interface, which was given to all my constables. And every vehicle, incidentally, is taken by my constable, who's a uniformed person. So he's trained, he's disciplined, etc. So he ensures that whatever is done in a proper manner, because social distancing was a very key thing. We also had to ensure that the vehicles, people don't jump onto the vehicles, and that leads to further infection. So only the people whose names are there in our list, they are called out, they're made to stand in a social distancing manner, and it is then recorded that this material has been given to this person. So this is how we started rolling out. This was our first headquarters. In between we had to change headquarters, but this was our first headquarters. We set up a verification team whose job is to start taking calls. Now here we had one district number, 1950, for all distress calls.
Saikat, we've lost your voice. Just check your connectivity.
Was very, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So verification also became very important, but we had only one number, 1950, for the district authorities, which was getting overloaded because thousands of calls were coming. Also, a whole lot of MLAs, MPs from other states and chief ministers were also sending us a lot of info because their people were trapped. So the first few days, there was a lot of chaos. So I called up a friend in Airtel. His name is Bhairav Hazarika, who's a senior guy there. And I requested, can they give us a couple of helplines so that our command center has some basic communication facilities. Within 24 hours, Bhairav got a whole lot of senior people lined up on telecons. We had 5 or 6 telecons together. They rolled out their people. And within 24 hours, 2 helplines were given to us with 2000 minutes of free calling for 3 months, absolutely free. And then we started populating. So we now had a backup to 1950, but we could also now divide some of the calls, distress calls coming to us. And again, a dedicated team of volunteers then started getting into this, and some of them started using their personal mobile phones, and they're still doing that, ensuring that we could cover as many people as possible. Now their job was to do 2 things. One, start filtering in calls, people. We had a certain criteria, the idea being we reach the most vulnerable and then the next layer. So people who had a little bit of salary, even if it's 5,000-6,000 rupees, that they will not starve, they became second priority. People who didn't even have 100 rupees, they became the first priority. So a certain amount of filtering through a set of questions would be done. And then the people who were left, who we considered through phone verification are genuine, we handed them over to what we call a quick reaction team. That quick reactions team was to go on ground and meet those people, hand over the rations, and also get a sense of how many families live in that area, who's looking after them, what are their problems, and that would enter our data system. And once it would come into a data system, it would get mapped for further work. Now, this is how we decided. Our relief ops commander, emergency ops commander was Mr. Chandar Mohan, who, because he's from the police service and he had basically set up everything, he became the head. And we also have now taken over practically most of his office. So he has a 5-story office. The basement and ground floor is where all our rations are kept. On the first floor, we don't disturb him because that's where his core office is. Above, on the second floor is where our command headquarters are, and just above us is the CID headquarters. So it's basically, you have the check and the balance and the rations all working together in one building right now. As I said, you had deputy zonal heads who were looking after their particular zones, which has now been mapped to each police station, etc. Now, certain interesting things, when we moved, the day we moved to our new headquarters, this is the scene that we had to do. We had to practically start cleaning up the place on our own. So she is Ritu Sharma. She's the head of my verification team. She somehow managed to steal some buckets and some mops from the police and started cleaning it up. And suddenly when others saw her, they also picked up mops and we cleaned it up. The first day we were cleaning up the headquarters, and this was while our relief operations were already on. So we had to move our relief material into the police headquarters. We had to clean it up, set up our command center all over again, while at the same time ensuring that no relief operations stop. And on one particular night, we picked up 80 tons. 80 tons of material were picked up in 4 hours, and people just moved to this new headquarters. Also, on the 30th of March, we were also trying to figure out what would be the flow chart of work, etc. So I'll just show you while we were working, we started drawing this on hand, that who's going to be what roles people will play, etc. So I was drawing this kind of stuff by hand and showing it to Manisha and Chandar, and we were discussing and implementing it as we went. So this was to ensure that, work people know are given assigned roles, they know who needs to do what, etc. So even people who wanted to give donations, so there is Manish as the overall incident commander, there is the control room, emails would come, then we would pass it on to the backend team, and they would first talk to the donors and then get into the zone, talk to the zone heads, and ensure that the material reaches them. So this is how we were building our system. And as you can see, I was writing it all down on a pad, and then putting it all together to understand the full framework of what we are doing. And the fancier version of this flow chart is here. This is the fancier, nicely designed version, but this is how we actually built our systems on the flow. So if we have a motor transport pool, how the information will flow, who will do what, etc. was worked out. This is our call verification, who will do what, how our relief material workflow will happen. And these are some of the things we started and then formalized, and we have added more things to it. So basically what the key part is, that this should be a model which is scalable. This should be a model which is modular. So where you need to bring in certain kinds of things, you bring in those certain elements. When you need to take out certain elements and stop them, we stop them. Another task that came to us was that a lot of people were getting infected and they were being quarantined, and anybody in contact with them. The government was like wondering who will take care of them, because they have to be fed, they have to be taken care of, medicines have to be in. So we created a separate isolation team. A friend of ours called Vaidyanathan, he then took charge of it. The man works incredibly hard. He took this team, and they were at most risk. So we had to go out and get PPEs for them, fully kit them. And their job is to take food to all the quarantined families across the district and ensure that twice a day or thrice a day they're taken care of. And whenever anybody, now we have also expanded their role, if anybody is having any major health issues and they are not being able to reach the doctor or the hospital, our team takes up. We have dedicated, we have again, according to zone wise number of ambulances, etc. People are taken to a particular hospital and then dropped back after they're taken care of. Also, as I said, we've been mapping, there's a dedicated data backend team. So there is data backend team 2, which looks after the donations and the RWS, and we have data team 1, whose job is to look after all the rations, what is coming in, where it is going, how it is being distributed. There's a father and son duo, Rajiv and Karan Nandwani. They take care of most of this. And they also have another colleague, Sukesh Saini, who sits with us in the command room. So Karan and his father, Rajiv, work from home, while Sukesh sits with us, again puts in 12-14 hours a day, mapping every grain which is coming in and what is going out, and keeping a look of it. In case something is going down, then we go back to our donors and they start bringing us all the materials. So one last thing that I wanted to add was that I also realized to my horror that the Twitter handles of the Deputy Commissioner of Gurgaon, who's also supposed to be some sort of a nodal agency, his Twitter handle was not verified. CD Gurugram, which is Civil Defense Gurugram, their Twitter handle was not verified. So I called up a friend of mine, Mahima, who's the policy head for Twitter in India, and she immediately got her global teams to work, and we got these handles verified. When people came to know district of Rewari, their DC, the district of Nu, their DC, all these IAS officers started calling me up, can you also help us? We are facing similar challenges. So we got all of them verified, so that people knew that there are some verified, authorized handles, people who will be giving out authentic information. Manish Yadav, amazing guy, has been working like mad. I mean, he's a tehsildar. I've not seen a tehsildar like him, always smiling under pressure. This guy did an amazing thing one day when people started coming and saying that, look, we are getting this, the Palghar incident happened, and we have some people who are from the RSS. We have practicing Muslims and RSS working together in the same team. So there's a different kind of integration also taking place, and they all have meals together and they've become great friends. But a lot of rumors, etc. were coming. So this man actually took a debriefing where he said, look, there is a site called altnews.com. It's a fact-checking site. He made everybody sort of download it and look at the site and ensure that people will not be spreading anything on WhatsApp which could become incendiary or which could create all kinds of issues. So again, that became a very positive and reaffirming thing. Also, we created a system that every day we would have 3 briefings. One would be 09:30, we would have a briefing where we would brief only the top leadership, discuss whatever issues they're having, a slide of a private meeting. Then 10:00 hours, everybody, the whole team, all the volunteers, etc., whoever was available, everybody would have a briefing, so that if anybody has some good suggestions, that could be recorded. If anybody had any issues, that could be recorded. And if we have to tell something which is of mass consumption, that can be done. Then at 17:30 hours, which is in the evening, we would have a debriefing session where whatever has happened during the day would be reviewed. If there are any mistakes, those mistakes would be recognized and sort of rectified, or some kind of issues would be worked out so that those mistakes don't happen again. And in between, I would have a meeting with Mr. Chandar Mohan, so that in case I'm running short of any resources, he could then put his team into place. So right now, we have about 325 odd civil defense volunteers, out of which about 150 to 200 come every day, because we also have to work out a roster where some people can rest while the others are working. Among the police constables, I have 20 for the transport team, 70 for my intelligence team, and 20 more constables who are actually still undergoing training. So they have been put to me saying that you now train them for the rest of the time because it's an emergency. So they're part of my distribution and my QRT team. So this is, with that, I'll end this and I'll leave it for questions or any interaction.
Saikat, I'm going to lead with some questions till we take audience questions. Thank you so much for sharing this in detail. A lot of people have requested for the document that you've shared. So do allow us to share that with people. I hope that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Can you just tell us about, since we have a lot of comms professionals, this is a perfect case study of communication channels being established to make sure that there's trust. And I think what you did by getting all the Twitter handles verified, of creating the RWA WhatsApp groups, it was all about trust. And I think what we've all seen is that even the image of the police has taken a huge, huge positive upward swing during this exercise. So just talk to us. Were you thinking of some of these things when you were putting it together, or is it just that you just thought of that, these are necessary communication channels?
So trust was a core tenet or philosophy behind all the things that we did, because my first worry was in disaster, when normal communication channels break down because of the disaster, the government is not able to communicate, people who are stranded are not being able to communicate, and that fosters a lot of problems. So establishing and ensuring that there is 1 or 2 or 3 channels of communication constantly open, which also has people in authority part of it, was very, very critical. Also, nobody's seen a lockdown, except unless you're lucky enough to be in Kashmir, none of us have been under a lockdown for a long time. So we had to ensure that people who are in a lockdown, who have never had this kind of a situation ever in their life, have some access to people in authority so that they know that the government is functioning. If we can assure people that the government or the authority or somebody is functioning and functioning well, that fosters a lot of trust. So one key thing in any crisis is we need to be quick with information. We need to be open with information, and transparency actually fosters trust. And moment you have fostered some degree of trust, I think the first major hurdle or battle has been won. So this was the reason why, I also was very lucky. Chandar Mohan, somebody who's in uniform, an IPS officer, immediately caught onto all that and agreed to be part of all this and put in all his effort to ensure this would happen. The district administration also agreed to that. So that created a feeling where people could get in touch with anybody in authority and within a certain stipulated time get back some response, giving them the feeling that the government is in charge, they're taking care of things, and we will ensure that whatever needs to be done gets done.
Great. My next question to you is that since you've been part of so many policy initiatives, if there was this one learning that you had to take from this, that when you're looking to make a policy nudge, what's the best formula that's there?
So this is interesting. Like, for example, when I was vice president with Reliance Global Corporate Security, it's an associate company of Reliance Industries, and our only role was look after security and de-risk any possible risk. Especially, counterterrorism and cybersecurity were my core areas. Now, my thing was that because these are sensitive issues, the Jamnagar refinery is a critical asset, not only for the company, but also nationally. I mean, almost 25 to 30% of crude oil is for India is actually refined there. So if, let's say, the Lashkar-e-Toiba takes that refinery out, suddenly Indian economy will start plunging, Indian national security will start plunging, it will be chaos in the stock markets. So the intelligence bureau plays a role, the local police plays a role, CISF plays a role. There's a lot of government and private interaction. My thing was that if you have to develop policies, you have to ensure that the policies are something which are feasible for stakeholders. There is always a tension between the government and the private players, because government is essentially a regulator and private players are always seen as people trying to get the maximum for them. But how do we find a meeting point? So my idea was that any policy that has to be decided, which will have a great implication on the private sector and other stakeholders, or as civil society or citizens, if we can build a joint model, then what will happen is that we start working together, and whatever challenges we discover, it will be a joint discovery. And when you discover things together, there is a camaraderie that gets built, because now you're not throwing each other's problems at each other, but discovering them together and trying to find solutions together. So if you can have a joint model, like I'll tell you, under Reliance, within 6 months, we signed an MOU with the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, which is the nodal body for all critical infrastructure in the country, to look after cybersecurity. We signed an MOU where their scientists came to our place, our people went to theirs, we exchanged a lot of information, we did a mapping of vulnerabilities together, and whatever discoveries we found in the energy sector became their foundation for building policies for the energy sector as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So similarly here, in a crisis situation, if we can come together, whatever challenges, may it be something as simple as, how is your distribution taking place? Or is it a policy which is a high level policy about that, this is our grand policy on security, so this has to be implemented. If we can start doing some of this together, and this is where I guess relationships really matter. So we start building relationships with these government agencies. We find out what they need. We find out what the private stakeholder needs, find ways to map them together. And once they start doing these projects together, the discoveries of problems is together, the solutions become together, and that becomes policy. So that is the kind of approach that I've been trying to develop, which is why integration again here.
So I'm going to take some questions which have been coming in the Q&A section. So one of the questions, Saikat, is that was there any roadblock that you faced in this whole situation? And if yes, then how did you address that?
So there were a lot of roadblocks, but because since I'm working in the system now, I will not get into specifics, which is a strange thing. Again, usually as a journalist, first thing you want to do is bring out the roadblocks. But one thing I realized was that there will be all kinds of tensions which will come in. There will be, on ground, there are tremendous amount of politics that goes on. So for example, if I have to drop rations in a particular area, which is basically a worker colony, the workers have a thekedar. The thekedar has a landlord. The landlord has a political affiliation. So there will be lots of complexities that you have to go through. So one thing that we started doing was, for any kind of complex things, become as transparent as possible. The second advantage we had was that a lot of people were constantly aware of the fact that they're volunteering. So if you're volunteering time, then it is, as they say, this is seva. So that concept of seva really helped us, where we said that, look, personal egos, etc., have to be set aside. We have to feed people. We have to take care of them. This is a existential challenge for all of us. If we don't survive this, we may all cease to exist as people. I mean, that's the threat from the virus. So that started resolving a lot of those issues. In short, once you have identified the problem and everybody has accepted this is the common threat, that unifies people. And two, transparency amongst ourselves and constant communication ensured that we as a team could quickly resolve any challenges coming up and continue to function.
Thanks, Saikat. I'm going to open up for some questions of some people who want to be on video and ask questions. So if we could just have a question from Pradeep Vadva. He's been wanting to ask a question. So Pradeep, would you want to switch on your video and ask a question?
Amrit, should I answer each question or should I take a few and then answer?
No, these are all unique questions. So if you could answer these, it would be great.
Hi, Saikat.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first I want to congratulate you. I think that you've actually put some textbook kind of a thing into reality practically. So that's amazing, actually. Congratulations to you and the team. My question is very simple that, Gurgaon had very few cases, live cases of COVID. If, you were to replicate this, because that's the whole idea, that you've created a model and you want to replicate it or you want to give it for replication in other parts, how would it have been different if it was a more complex geography and if the number of cases were high? Let's take example of, let's say, a Bombay or a Delhi.
So that's a great question. And this is something that, so whenever I take on a project, first is of course what I call a POC, the proof of concept. Once a proof of concept has been done, the next challenge for me is scalability. So whenever I start designing something, I keep both these things in mind that, first I have to prove it in my head and on ground. Once that is validated, can I scale it is the big challenge. So the idea is this model will work even in a city like Delhi or Mumbai, for the simple reason that instead of treating one city as one zone or 4 zones, I just increase the number of zones and there the same stakeholders will be working. So then what I do is that I start putting integrated command centers in each zone. So what will happen is all the key stakeholders will for that particular zone start working together. You see, so let's say I take the Mahim area of Mumbai or I take the South Delhi part. Let's say South Delhi area becomes one. There the police will have a role, the municipal corporation will have a role, the district administration who are in charge of food supplies, etc. will have a role. The doctors in that area will have a role. So if I can integrate them in South Delhi or in the Mahim area, then that becomes my integrated command center. And at the center, I'll have another command center whose only job will be to keep looking at what are the issues your zonal command centers are having. So as a result, if you have the basic thing is in place, because in every area you have to just do the same thing. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel for every area. You have an intelligence team who's telling you this is the area that needs to be touched. The fleet moves out, gives that particular kind of stuff. The doctors go out and do what they have to do, isolation team, etc. Each of it can easily be scaled up and federated from zone to zone.
So your document, does it have areas defined which can be customized as per the requirement of? So do you give any sort of direction in that document?
No, right now, because this was the first version and we had to roll it out by the 5th or the 6th, we only put the basic model in place. The idea being, even if you, let's say I have Ghaziabad, I divide Ghaziabad into 5 zones. Each zone should get an integrated command center and then give them autonomy to figure out things, etc. Just the central guy's job, who's in the central command, should only be to ensure that these people are not facing any challenges of supplies or manpower. That's all.
Thank you, and hats off to you again. Great job. Thank you so much.
I'm going to hand over now to Vineet, who's a citizen of Gurgaon. And I think since this is working in Gurgaon, as a citizen, Vineet, some questions that you might have for Saikat.
Amrit, thanks everybody at SCORE Reputation today to actually bringing this session to public. I believe it's a great platform. The way Saikat has described, I'm sure the work has gone 100 times more what he's talking right now. So Saikat, first of all, compliments to you, and I believe and I strongly believe that your journalistic hat has helped you to look at that minute details, which has helped you to sort of create and bring in things. I've gone this report in detail, and I know for sure there's so much you have covered in such a less time. Congratulations and hats off to you and everybody in the. So I have a couple of questions, and I'll put it right. Both of these to you. Question number one is I believe this is one of the perfect examples of public-private partnership, as well as probably the civil society. And I'm sure it's the tough times when these activities get noticed and also required at maximum. So that's point number one. And therefore, I wanted to understand, is there something which you felt could have been done, or you could have got more support probably from the corporate sector or the civil society, probably more donations, probably more support for the food, and because Gurgaon also happened to be a a millennial city and the corporate, probably one of the biggest corporate centers of India. So that's question number one. Question number two, when it comes to challenges, have you, I could see that you've very well defined these 4 zones, which has been the most challenging. How the high and mighty of Gurgaon behaved and supported the whole initiative. I think if you can put in some thoughts on that, that would be great.
So first part of your question, that which was basically, can you repeat that first part again?
So the first part of the question was essentially that, is there something which you felt as a corporate or as a a public-private partnership, there's something which could have been done more which could have helped you, and even from the civil society?
Like, you see, the corporates, I mean, number of corporates are already beginning to donate and put in a lot of effort. So they have been fantastic in that sense. Like, for example, Zomato has a Feed India program. So a bulk of our rations came from Zomato's Feed India program, and they've been terrific. Hero Motocorp, who have a factory here, they ensured that at least 3,000 meals regularly go out. And there was a ex-army guy, Colonel Rajiv Kotwal, and the plant head Mahesh Kaikini. They immediately said that what can we offer? We said, look, we have the vehicles, we have the permission, but these are the clusters which are not getting any food. They had a massive factory cafeteria. They put all their cafeteria to start cooking food, and their food for a while also became our food. So like whatever lunch we have in the command center is basically the relief cooked food that goes out. So we take away 100 packets and we keep it for ourselves. So this would also ensure that whatever is being sent out is good, it's healthy, and we are eating the same thing that we are giving out. And they, since the 27th, have been supporting this, and they still haven't backed out. And they also got permission, quickly started giving us hand sanitizers, and also we started giving out hand sanitizers. Some of them even came up and said, do you want masks? So we started using, so we made this rule, if you're taking relief material from us, you have to wear a mask, otherwise we won't give it to you. So in a way, it became a mass program of giving masks to everybody and sanitizers to everybody. So their support was terrific. And I mean, we could always use more stuff, but whatever had to be, like Airtel, within 24 hours, putting 2 lines with internet connection and free calling, etc. I mean, fantastic effort from them. So all these guys were doing great stuff. Your second part of your question, how did the high and mighty? One challenge that we have was RWA suddenly thought that we now have a lot of power in our hands. We will strictly ensure social distancing. Nobody gets to step out. We will not let anybody get out of their homes, etc. And this was something that both Chandar, Manish, and we were anticipating something like this. We had to ensure that, we try to keep at least some semblance of normalcy even during a crisis, because if people, mental health becomes a major challenge. And you see, mental health will affect people who are better off, and not so much people who are already, facing starvation or existential challenges, because for them, survival is a major thing. People who are slightly well off, etc., for them, mental health becomes a major issue, because you're trapped suddenly, you have claustrophobia, you are now living with family members. You may love them, but how much can you really love if you're cooped out inside a house for over 30 days? So those things we started factoring in, and we started ensuring, and many of these complaints would come to the police, and Chandar started telling all his SHOs, we have to be strict because we can't let the virus go, but we have to do it in a humane manner. And he started drilling it into each and every SHOs. And in the police, there is a joke about the police that once you tell the SHO, look, I need an atomic weapon, the SHO will try and get you the atomic weapon. If he can't, we'll get you at least the parts. If not the parts, the uranium, and then say, sir, I've got you the uranium, now I'm going to go and get something else. So they're extremely disciplined in that sense. When the boss says you have to do this, they'll do this. So they knew and understood, and so at barricades, people were sensitized. SHOs were told. So when the RWA president would say, 5 people are now stepping out, he said, look, they need some fresh air. Just ensure social distancing, but let them breathe, because people need to also feel, as long as they're not stepping out into the roads. And if they have to step out into the roads, let it be for essential supplies. And then senior citizens, how do we take care of them? So maids have to be given special permission. Disabled people, they have to be given, etc. So all those things started getting factoring in, and the police system became very good, because each SHO really knows his jurisdiction and is also in touch with the key RWA presidents, etc.
That's great, Saikat. I think that's fabulous. As a as a comms professional, the way I would summarize it is that you really mapped out your target audience and you had a separate message for each of them. And I think that's the learning that we need to take from you. We've got Anand of Ola who's raised his hand. Anand, would you want to ask a question?
Hi, Saikat.
Hi.
Wonderful work, and I think very, very inspiring to see. So much happening with so much sharp focus. I just had one interesting viewpoint that I want to get off you. I'm sure in this entire process there was also critique, right? I'm sure there was public critique. I'm assuming there were probably on ground folks who didn't benefit, right? There might have been some noise from there. How did your teams handle all of this? Was that any relief experiment or relief initiative generally has some level of critique coming in from the benefactor community or people who didn't benefit, right? Was there a challenge handling it? Any specific learnings that you'd like to share?
So we had an interesting episode, but first, the general part answer to your question is that one advantage you have as a journalist is that when information starts flowing from 7 different segments, we get trained to handle all sorts of information and figure out what's going on. So that's one training, especially if you're covering war or if you're covering natural disasters, that comes easily. But the idea was that we will be sensitive to we would look at it as intelligence. If it is actionable intelligence, we'll act upon it. So we started looking at any lead. So somebody from Twitter would send. So we have I am now part of some 15 critical WhatsApp groups. So there is a verification WhatsApp group. There is a input WhatsApp group. So whenever some input comes in from a particular source, it is sent to the verification team. And we have created what we call a log register, where what is the source of the information, what time did it come in, which day did it come in, what do they want, etc. All that is now dutifully logged, put on Excel sheet, so anybody can come and check out that data. So this started helping us become very live to any input that is coming in. So specific point is Barkha Dutt was moving around doing stories, and suddenly from Gurgaon, a place called Behrampur, she gave a story saying that here is a person, his name is Manish Kumar, he's from Bihar, he has a family of 6 or something, and he's very hungry. And then Manish Kumar comes on camera and says, I am desperate for food, this, that, etc. So we saw this about 9 hours later. We immediately got into a vehicle, took a truck, we went to that area, and using our connect. So in the image, we could see so and so Dharam Kanta and so sugarcane. So we used our local intelligence to figure out where exactly, and we reached that exact spot where she had done that. Then we started making calls, and you won't believe this. We found that Manish Kumar. We took his video. Wow. We figured out what his problem is. We did a quick survey of the area. Whoever needed rations was given to them. We discovered he's got 10,000 rupees in his savings bank, and his challenge was he could not go to an ATM because the PIN was not being generated. We got the PIN generated, helped him withdraw the money, spoke to his landlord, and took care of the whole thing. And we put this all out in tweets and stuff like that with images which match exactly what Barkha had put out. So this ensured that people knew that we are live, and whatever is humanly possible, we'll take care of.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Hats off to your team, and great work and very, very inspiring. Thank you for this.
We have another question to come on video. Roselle, if you could ask your question, and then we'll be pretty much see if you can answer the box Q&A and then wrap up. Roselle, are you going to be asking your question? Yeah, Roselle, you're on mute. If you could unmute, please.
Yeah, there is something.
Yeah, we
can
can
you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I can't hear you properly. Hi, this is a wonderful initiative, and it's so inspiring to see a journalist actually do all of this. So one thing that kept coming to my mind is that, as a journalist, we definitely know a lot of people, who to get in touch with and so on. But to keep calm in all of these situations, how do you really handle a team like that? I mean, a huge team that has how do you put all of them together to think alike really, and uh, agree to a mission and vision? I mean, how do you really do that?
So you started the question by saying it's amazing to see a journalist do all this. Journalists are not that bad. I mean, I know there are some who ask for police protection at the drop of a hat, and you know who they are. I don't consider them journalists, but generally they are a decent lot. So that's the first thing. But you see, as journalists, we already deal with certain kinds of pressures. And you see, the kind of career I've been embedded with the military, going out on military operations. I mean, you name it, ambushes, road opening parties, this, that, etc. I've done most of it with the army. So that helps you figure out how, how the command and control structure works and how to handle pressure. So you also have to ensure that people know what their specific roles are. They don't start going beyond that role, but they also do the role well. So once the roles are well defined and a certain responsibility is given, in every debrief, we would ensure that people are reminded this is the role that you have to play, and this is the stuff that output has to be done. So that ensured that a lot of things would move smoothly. Secondly, I also ensured that whenever something people would constantly, they're under stress, so they would start reacting in strange manners, and they would start having either have a breakdown or get very angry, which is normal under any crisis situation. So the key part is don't react at that moment, and ensure or try to ensure others don't react to it. Let a person speak out, let a person sort of express his or her emotions. Like one lady, for 3 days, every 45 minutes, I had to make her sit with me, and she would break down, cry. Then we would have a chat, and then she would be back. And then she turned out to be one of the pillars of this thing. So you just have to hear people when they have something to say, hear them out, try and address their issue, and ensure that whatever problems they're facing, if I can minimize those problems, they will also know they have been heard, their issues been taken care of, and we are here for a much larger cause.
Thanks, Saikat.
So
Sorry, Roselle, you have something more to ask?
No, I was just saying that so empathy is the key to winning trust and fueling the
staying
whole.
calm. I mean, don't lose it at the drop of a hat. That's what I keep telling myself every day.
Sure. Thank you so much, and all the best.
So we've covered most of the questions in the Q&A box, except one, Saikat, and I'm going to ask that question of you before we wrap up. So the question is that, was your team ever attacked? Because, there is always a lot of skepticism also with police and help working teams. So any time that you want to share an incident where a team was attacked, or was it all smooth?
No, fortunately that didn't happen, because, once a certain kind of positive image and messaging goes out, then people know that, these people are not here to create any trouble. And as Chandar kept telling his people and all his SHOs, and I must say he's got a wonderful team of SHOs, they kept also telling their constabulary, we are here not to harass people. This is not the time to get into anything which might create unnecessary tension. So there can't be any discrimination on any ground. There can't be anything where you look at it from normal policing lens. So that humane approach ensured that we didn't have any issue where people suddenly attacked or got agitated, etc. Luckily, Gurgaon, we haven't recorded any such.
That's wonderful. I have two questions and we'll wrap up. One is that have other district police come to you and tried to adopt this model? Has that conversation happened? Like, I live in South Delhi. So has South Delhi police come and talked to you and said, hey, what a great model, and can we work with you?
So Delhi police is a strange creature of its own, and because it's such a high profile, I don't think they did. But Ghaziabad, some people took our model and they divided themselves into different zones, and some people from other parts of the country. But the idea was that if we can push out the model to as many people, even if they pick up 10-15% of it, we were hoping that they can make their relief operations a little smoother. And when we do an iterative process later on, when the crisis is over, we can refine it and a template. I mean, the idea is that during a crisis, you shouldn't have to go around looking for an idea. If a certain booklet is available, they know what to look at and at least take off and then tweak it according to their requirements.
Last sensitive question. You know, Gurgaon population, there is also a lot of minority minority community which resides there. And we are also kicking off Ramadan from today. So how have you taken care of that? And we have not heard any, religious overtones come up in this whole debate.
So again, one thing that I did was in every team, I inserted some police, all my constables. And my constables are clear about one thing, that once you put on the khaki uniform, you are a completely neutral entity. Then you lose your religion, your caste, your creed, and you are now a police official, you are a constable who is neutral to everybody. So that created a nice check and balance. And I also ensured that each relief vehicle going out is led by a police constable. And what Chandar Mohan did was he gave me constables with 2 or 3 years of service. So they're young boys, 25, 26, 27, lot of idealism, and they still are very sort of straight in what they want to do. And anyway, Haryana police, my personal experience has been, is a fairly efficient force. So as a result, they ensured that there was complete neutrality. Every time we got any sort of intelligence that some kind of discrimination is being done, we didn't haul up anybody, but we ensured that a visible team will go to that area and deliver rations, etc., so that they also start talking to each other and say, look, if nobody else works, the police and the civil defense will work, and we can sort of trust them. I'll give you one small example. I got a lead that a Kashmiri set of students who study in DLF phase 2, they study in some university there, they are without food. And when I called them up, they were very angry because I was asking for, we have a verification process. Have you got this? Have you got this? And they said, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not talking to you. So another person called up and said, look, I'm very sorry. They're very agitated because they're not getting any relief. People just call up and keep taking their details. I said, look, tell him to calm down, and I need to do this because I can't bypass the system that I have designed. So then everybody will start laughing at me. So I have to do this, but I'll assure you, if it's a genuine case, we will take care of it. That boy spoke to me. There were people of 15 or 20 boys and girls were stuck there. We gave them rations, and we ensured that they also say they don't need wheat because they're rice eaters. So we gave them more rice and no wheat. And we did all that. Within 15 minutes of the delivery of that, he sent me a WhatsApp message, and I took a screenshot saying, may God bless you. We couldn't imagine this could happen, and thanks to the command center, this has happened.
Thank you so much. Thank you, SCORE, and thank you, Reputation Today, for getting us this platform. And I think what I've learned from today is just keep empathy at core whenever you're working on something, and everything else falls into place. Lots of learnings for us as comms professionals, how to influence public policy, how to work on citizenship. And thank you, Amit, for taking me up on getting Saikat over here, though he's not the traditional comms person. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Saturday afternoon.
Thanks, Amrit, and thanks, Saikat and Vineet, for this fascinating conversation. I'm sure I speak for all of us that we are walking away with some incredible insights from the ground zero of this crisis. I want to thank all the attendees for joining us today. If you know anyone who has missed out, they can write to us on Twitter, and we will make sure that we share the access of this webinar with you. As Saikat pointed out, he's very kindly agreed to share the presentation he's used with everyone. So it will reach everyone who has attended on their emails. And if you know anybody who has not attended, they can write to us again on Twitter, and we will be happy to pass it on. We plan to do this every Saturday along with Reputation Today. And of course, in addition to our Wednesday evening webinar, which happens at 6 p.m. every Wednesday. So I'd like you all to check out our Twitter page once again to get more details on that. And I hope to see you all on Wednesday evening. Thank you once again.
And can I just add, everybody, please spread word about the work, because I think as a citizen, if we can have more and more police adopt this model, because the lockdown is going to keep coming and going, we will all benefit. The reason I, approached Amit for this session was because I want that the Saikat's work spreads. So thank you so much. And I hope to see a lot of amplification of the work that Saikat has talked about.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.